Hey everyone, diving into the world of healthier data in healthcare today with Carta Healthcare. Greg, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Really excited for this chat. You're a longtime healthcare thought leader and technologist at Carta Healthcare. Maybe introduce yourself, a little bit about your really fascinating background and bio, and what's the mission at Carta?
Personally, I've been in the healthcare IT realm for almost 40 years and started my career actually in a hospital, which I like to think makes me legit a little bit. Um, but out of a almost 40-year career, I'd probably say 35 years has been spent in and around the data and analytics space in healthcare, data analytics and decision support in healthcare. And so I've made a career, I'd say, out of, or a pat, it's more than a career, it's a passion of mine, which is to transform healthcare by making data driven decisions. And it's something that I've been sort of really passionate about for a very long time since I actually started my career in a hospital.
Wow, fantastic opening. And let's start. Carta is using AI to make it easier for hospitals to manage and integrate all of their patient data. That's a Herculean task. Maybe tell us more about the big mission.
Yeah, let me back up a little bit before I talk about Carter and just talk about the challenges in the industry. The I mean, if you really think about it, in other industries, data is gold, and data drives decision making. Data provides the information for transforming industries, businesses, improving things, and so on. And so I would say, starting with the data, right? Data is the single most important ingredient for transforming healthcare. Without the data, you can't have
Mm,
visibility into what's actually happening. And so when you think about data in healthcare, obviously over the last 15 years or so, right, we've digitized through electronic health records and so on. Well, there have always been departmental systems like lab systems and cardiology systems and so on that have collected data. But only in the last 15 years or so has the data set become much more rich. One of the challenges with data that's in the EHR in particular is that 80% of the data is in unstructured notes. And
Mhm.
when you think about trying to pull the data, pull the insight out of unstructured notes, where it's kind of a free for all in terms of it's just pure text, it makes it very difficult to really understand what the data is and what it might be telling you. And so when it comes to having pristine, super high quality data, what health systems do is they employ what are called clinical data abstractors. And clinical data abstractors, their role is to really comb through the data and pull out really important and relevant information for then populating something that are called clinical registries. And clinical registries are used for mostly quality and process improvement efforts and accreditation. There's some regulatory compliance things, or registries specifically, and that type of thing. And so the challenge is that you literally, this is, I mean, quite honestly, this is what happens all day if you're a clinical data abstractor. You have some screen up here called the electronic health record, and that
Mhm.
EHR could be Epic, Cerner, Meditech, doesn't really matter, right? Or some other departmental system. And over here on this screen, they literally have a system, a registry system that they're entering data into that has been built on Windows 95, and it's incredibly antiquated with a user interface that would make you cry. Um, and so all day long, this is what abstractors do. They're going to this screen, they're combing through the notes, looking through the data, and then they're going over here and they're entering the data in. And these registry questions are, depending upon the registry, whether, could be cardiovascular, could be stroke, could be oncology. One registry could have 50 questions, another could have 350 questions. So they're very
mm,
complex, very intricate, and very detail oriented clinical questions that it requires the intelligence of a clinician to be able to, in the EHR, ascertain, here's the question in the registry. I need to find the data here in the unstructured notes to populate the registry. It's a really hard job. And fortunately, in today's world, it's largely manual in that process. It requires that human to actually do all the work. And so, we've been specifically in the automation of clinical data abstraction business, I would say, if you want to call it a business, for since 2016. And really, where we got started was it was based on a project. Our founder, Matt Hollingsworth, he was an MBA candidate at Stanford, and he was on a project at Stanford Children's Hospital they were trying to understand supply utilization in the OR. And essentially what the challenge they had was they needed to comb through lots of different data sources to pull out the data. And this process took 18 months. And by the time you get to 18 months, you kind of forgot what the question was you were going to ask. And data becomes stale and irrelevant. And so Matt, he was a computer science major as well. And he wrote an algorithm to automatically abstract the data for this specific project around OR utilization. And the principal investigator on the project saw what he was doing and thought this was brilliant and could see lots of other places that they could apply the technology. And that really led to the challenge of clinical data abstraction. And so back in the day, way before sort of AI was what it is today and the hype and the buzz, we were applying the AI machine learning to this problem. Fast forward, and I would say, going way back, well, each of those projects was successful at Stanford Children's and then a bunch of other customers. I would say it was difficult to scale data science projects in a big way because every implementation was kind of unique to that data set and the problem that it was trying to solve for. Fast forward to, a year ago or so, it's really about a year ago when, generative AI and large language models became commercially viable for a company like Carta to use or to leverage. That was a game changer, absolute game changer for us, because when you think about what an LLM is specifically designed to do, it's designed to work against unstructured data. And when you think about the problem in the EHR over here, where the abstractor is trying to read through all the clinical notes that are abbreviated and non-standard, I think that's an important thing. It's an ideal marriage of the technology and the problem of clinical data abstraction. So today, we work with we work with hospitals that are standalone community hospitals, all the way up to large multi-state, multi-entity health systems like a Common Spirit or a LifePoint, as an example. I think the reality is the challenge of clinical data abstraction exists in every single hospital everywhere. They don't always participate in all the registries, but they do participate in some. Some they have to for compliance reasons. But it's a challenge that is universal. And so at the end of the day, going back to where I kind of started, which is, and where I've spent my career around data and analytics, trying to use data to drive improvement and drive transformation in healthcare, having the highest quality, most pristine data is paramount. And being able to apply technology like AI to the challenge of abstracting that data is a marriage made in heaven.
Well, absolutely. Greg, thank you so much for both our overview of the challenges in healthcare in the specific area of managing data and data abstraction. It's quite mind-boggling how manual and unscalable that process used to be, and I guess still is in some places. Thank you for a review of your technology. And clear benefits are right there in terms of reducing errors and improving speed of this activity. So I want to focus on data security, though. So obviously, data security is paramount in healthcare and protecting it. So tell us how this patient information is safe and secure while still allowing for all this analysis to take place.
Yeah. That's a good question. And so let me, so at a baseline, if you're not HIPAA compliant, you're not going to operate in this environment, right? So you sort of start there. But when you think about AI and the average person who is using things like ChatGPT, every time they make a query or a prompt into ChatGPT, that's going out into a public cloud. It's going out to OpenAI and their data and in their cloud. That's not a secure environment for healthcare. And so what we do is, and I should back up for a second, we are not in the LLM creation business. There's lots of companies out there that are developing great models with open APIs that you can access and leverage. And so we have built our platform on AWS, the Bedrock, AWS Bedrock, and we can create a private cloud for every single customer. So it's only when they make a query, if you will, through Carta Healthcare to the data set, it's all within a private environment. So all of our customers, it's not a true multi-tenant environment. So all of our customers have their own private cloud, so the data is always secure to their organization.
Wow. Well, that makes very practical sense. So in terms of interoperability, it remains a big challenge. It's been a buzzword forever in healthcare, but how do you think about interoperability with existing infrastructure and systems, especially the older ones? Won't call anyone out here, but there's a lot of technical debt, as we used to call it, in healthcare.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I was with Medicity for about 6 years before and then we got acquired by Aetna, and then after that I was with Health Catalyst, and so collective about 12 years of sort of sitting in the interoperability space. And I would say, going back to 2008, before the HITECH Act, before meaningful use, before the just massive deployments of the EHRs, interoperability was a challenge. You had to rely on HL7, and of course there's different versions of HL7. A lot of data, if you will, was being, I'd say, communicated via fax and that type of thing. So it made interoperability very difficult. And so if I move forward, though, with modern EHRs, I would say just through federal regulation and environmental related causes, it's been a struggle to get interoperability to a place that is, I would say, ubiquitous, and which is we as patients and as human beings want ubiquity with our data in a secure way, of course. And so I think, HL7 obviously has evolved. HL7 is still a standard. Everybody's trying to move towards FHIR, but FHIR is not as prevalent as we would like out there. But I think when I think about interoperability, to me, it's somewhat of a moral topic in that we all have a right to be able to see our data, and it's really important. My mom fought cancer for 7 years, and I was a human HIE, shuffling boxes of paper from provider to provider with lab test results, X-rays, and everything else. And fortunately, now there is better technology that's in place that can do the electronic transfer of data, the HL7 or FHIR or other data sources. But I think that's a good example, Evan, where how modern technology has evolved to a place to make sense of the interoperable data. And one of the challenges to interoperability has always been data mapping and taking, from source system to end system, if you will, and mapping the data appropriately. And the challenge with that is that if you've got a health system with multiple entities, possibly multiple EHRs, and then a whole bunch of physician practices on multiple different EHRs, every time there's a change made to the source system, it breaks the interoperability, right? And everything has to be mapped, recoded. One of the things that we found that is just, in my mind, just magical and just incredibly productive is with large language models. We can just dump data into a pile, literally just dump it into a pile and let the AI sort through it. to find the key elements that are needed for clinical data abstraction or whatever purpose downstream, analytics downstream too. And so what that eliminates is the challenge of mapping multiple data sources. Like, we don't care. Send us a PDF, send us an image, send us, free-form text, send us an Excel spreadsheet. We don't care. Just dump it into a pile, let the AI sort through it. And it's amazing just the speed. I mean, you can do things in minutes that normally would take days, weeks, months to do. So that's a positive, I think, for the topic of interoperability. It's going to take some time for it to work its way through the health system, but I see a lot of possibilities.
I'll totally can relate to this. I was myself managing my mom's cancer care for 12 years with all the papers and having to organize everything by hand. So let's abstract away from just what happens on the back end here and talk about impact on patient care itself.
Sure.
With incorporating AI into your platform, tell us how this changed the way doctors and healthcare providers actually make decisions, and how does your technology help, in the end, improve patient care?
Sure. I think, again, going back to the foundational level, that data is the single most important ingredient. And so you got to start with pristine data. Otherwise, clinicians are not going to believe the data. And they're going to find all reasons why, well, that's different, that's not how I do it, those types of things. But I think when something that I learned early in my career is in working with clinicians that, largely in medicine, they will tell you that 80% of healthcare is protocol driven, meaning there's a standard way to do things 80% of the time. However, when you look at the US healthcare system, 30 to 40% of healthcare spend is waste, right? It's doing things, and I watched this with my mom fighting cancer, right? I'd go to one appointment with, because she had both ovarian cancer and breast cancer, so we had lots of different providers involved. You go to one provider visit, and there's a lab test result on a Thursday, then she has to go to another visit on a Friday, and the doctor says, no, I need to rerun that test because I just need to make sure. And it's incredibly frustrating and obviously increases the cost of healthcare in the United States when it could have been standardized and eliminate a lot of that friction. And so in order to really, affect the actual care patients are receiving downstream, you need to amass a large volume of data to really understand what the trends are, the patterns, and so on, and use analytics to be able to dive into that data and make sense of it all. And I think over the last 10 years, I've been more and more excited, I'd say, around clinician receptivity of using data to drive meaningful quality cost improvement. One of the things that I did recently is that I always had this question in the back of my mind: within the realm of clinical data abstraction, you have all these nurses and PAs and NPs and even doctors that are doing this manual work, right? We call swivel chair interoperability, just collecting all the data, validating, and so on. And again, the amount of time that it can save for them just to get the data is humongous. But I think the opportunity is there now to take the amount of time that clinicians spend on gathering data to spending more of their time actually looking at data, analyzing the data, and trying to drive improvement. And so one of the questions that I had recently was, health systems are going through all this effort, time, cost, money, of trying to get data that is high quality. Are they really using it? It seems like a really obvious question, but I really wanted to find out. So we did a market research study recently, and I was very pleasantly, I say surprised is probably the wrong answer, the wrong description, but I was delighted to see that 75% of the respondents are using the data for quality and process improvement purposes. And so to me, that was overwhelmingly encouraging, that people are really using this data, not just collecting it because they have to, or they were told to, or things like that.
Wow, very impressive. Do you have any anecdotes or stories where Carta is making a difference with patient care or hospital operations? Anything you can share on any favorite children, customers of yours?
They're all my favorite children.
Okay.
So when you think about what we do at Carta Healthcare specifically, we are the actual patient care process is downstream. So what we're doing is, we're collecting the data, we're harvesting the data, and we're populating the clinical registries. Downstream, what happens is clinicians use the data out of the clinical registry for quality and process improvement purposes. Carta is not involved in that aspect of it. Where we do have a demonstrable, significant impact to a health system, though, that ultimately does trickle down to patient care, are things like, the amount of time. Let me put it in these terms. So the amount of time it takes on average for a clinician to abstract one patient case is about an hour. And it really depends on the registries. Certain registries can take a lot longer, some are a little shorter, but on average, it's about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You think about it, an RN, an NP, and a PA or a doc, you think about the time and the cost of those people spending an hour doing that when they could be spending their time on direct patient care, especially the nurses. So that's one thing. And so with the way that we approach the challenge of clinical data abstraction, we can literally abstract the data for thousands of cases like that, right, in minutes, not hours, days, weeks, and months. And so when you look at many health systems, they have a lot of backlog, like up a year sometimes, in cases they just haven't had the resources to get to. Well, with technology and especially applying AI to the problem, you can have a significant impact. So how does that manifest itself down to patient care? One is we can cut the costs of doing the clinical data abstraction by 50% or more. We cut the amount of time in some recent customer implementations. And I should say that when we first started using LLMs against this data set, we thought we would get to maybe 50%, the AI would be able to answer 50% of the questions. We're now getting to almost 90%. Wow. And so when you think about that time of that person, you got the cost issue, but you also have their time, what it could be used to spend on patient care. By taking, reducing the amount of time by 90% is super important. One of the things that I should add in here is we do not believe that, or I do not believe that AI is a magic bullet. And it's going to solve every problem just through the application of technology. When it comes to things like clinical data abstraction, there is a need, I would say, to be a human in the loop, meaning having a clinician with knowledge of that and a subject matter expert to be able to validate what the AI has come up with. We all know that AI does make mistakes, call it hallucinations or whatever term du jour you want to use, but it's not foolproof, right? It does make mistakes. So we are proponents of, in the end, we don't believe that AI alone can solve the problem, nor do we believe that humans alone can solve the problem. But when you put the two together, it's really powerful. And so with the way that we work with our clients is, the technology does what it can do, and then the clinician validates the question, that the AI came up with the right answer. But they'll only validate it if they're provided with the right evidence or a specific registry question. And so we bake that into our platform as well, all the evidence behind every single registry question. So it ultimately, it reduces the amount of time, frees up clinicians to spend time doing other things that are more patient care related. It also dramatically reduces the cost of abstraction. And then there's a third metric that is important in the realm of clinical data abstraction. It's something called inter-rater reliability. And or IRR. And IRR refers to the quality of the data. And so it's essentially abstractors, abstract a series of cases, and then let's say 5 are chosen randomly, and then another abstractor abstracts the exact same cases to see if you come up with the right answer. And so, on average, a good metric for most hospitals is getting to 90% IRR. and we are consistently at about 99% IRR.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, you could abstract the data faster at a lower cost, but if it's not high quality data, you're not going to be able to use it. So the quality is something we're very focused on as well.
So you're hitting all three of those important metrics. Well, with Carta Healthcare getting already so much benefit to the healthcare, delivering so much benefit to healthcare, what is next as we close this conversation? What is next for Carta Healthcare? What is next personally for you? Any events, anything that's exciting you want to share?
Good question. I would say when we look at our customers and thinking about the industry and where it's heading or where it needs to head, we get a lot of requests from our customers for analytics around the registries themselves. And while every health system everywhere pretty much has their own data warehouses or multiple data warehouses, they could have Health Catalyst, they could have Innovation, they could have all kinds of different platforms. Largely, the data that is abstracted for registry purposes is not in those data warehouses. And so being able to feed the analytic environments with the data that we are abstracting is a huge push from our customers. And then also there are specialized analytics around the registries themselves for quality and process improvement purposes that we are getting asked to develop. So probably for Carta Healthcare, our next big push is going to be in the analytics space.
Fantastic. Well, what about you personally? Do you have any meetings or get-togethers as we head into the busy fall season?
It's conference season coming up. So there's a lot of that, health and downstream, Chime and Vibe and all that heading into the winter. But just we have a lot of demand, I'm on the road a lot, meeting with customers and partners and folks like that. And so it's a really exciting time. I'm not a AI doomsayer, and I am, having been in this business for so long, and I sometimes get very frustrated, Evan, that things don't happen faster in healthcare. We all know that healthcare tends to lag other industries, but AI is all around us every day in our everyday lives. And if we're comfortable in our everyday lives, then we should be able to apply it to healthcare too. And so I'm bullish.
Well said, and such an important mission. You're doing great work, and onwards and upwards. Congratulations on that. Hope to meet you next time you're in Boston or one of the many events around the country. Thanks, Greg, for joining.
Appreciate it. Thanks again. Great to meet you guys.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for listening and watching, and look forward to next time. Take care, everyone.